How's your guys' year been? Holding up? Yeah, 2024 was a shit show. Someone died, had a few relationships that didn't end well. A lot of traveling, that was cool. Job stuff, it was nuts. It's fine. I have a birthday in January and I'm not fucking looking forward to it. I thought after you turn 40, it kind of like stops. So today, or tonight, I should say, I'm going to be reading a new book. It is Alaskan Igloo Tales, and it's by Edward L. Keithon and illustrated by George Agapuk. And my cousin Camille, who I went and just visited recently, gave me this book. The first story we will read is The Dwarfs. In ancient times, there lived among the Eskimo a race of dwarfs. And I'm pretty sure they're, like we talked about, the Inuits or the Ijraks, like the little people. Inukalakanook. Sorry, I don't know if I said that right. Okay, let me try this again. Inukalaklanuk. The Eskimo called them. So they're called Inukalakanook. Wherever they're... This was made... Sorry. So this book was stories that are based in Shishmaref, Alaska. And Shishmaref is one of the small villages surrounding Nome. Like one of the villages in the hub. And I've never heard that. I'll have to ask them because I'm not Yupik, so, and I'm not from this region, so I'm gonna have to ask them about that pronunciation. That's weird. I've always just heard Ijagak. They were just like the Eskimo in appearance, only very much stronger and very small. They were only about as high as your knee, it is said. One dwarf alone could carry an ugruk, or big bearded seal. I've told you guys about ugruks, right? We go and skin them every summer. While two of them could launch a great skin boat and go whaling. They caught white whales and big black whales and dragged them to their igloos without the least trouble. You know what's funny? I've always, my whole life, I've eaten mukduk, which is kind of like a black, it's like black food with some blubber. And white mukduk, which is, we know that's beluga. But I've never really known what the English version or whatever of what an ugruk is called, or like the whale that we eat. I really don't know if it's like a gray whale, sperm whale. I don't even know. And it's embarrassing to not know, but I just know we eat mukduk. And the seal, I think it's a bearded, yeah, it has to be a bearded seal, but we call it an ugruk. So I don't know, we don't know these things. We even have like pretend names for stuff that we don't know the English names to. One that I thought was really interesting is we eat this a mud shark, and we say titalik, and it sounds like an Inupiaq word, right? Titalik. I looked up. I don't know. I think I saw it somewhere because it's a creepy looking mud shark. It looks kind of prehistoric. But then one of the books or whatever I saw, there was this like mud dinosaur fish thing with all these little appendages or little flippers, and it was called a titalik. So I was like, that is so weird. Did we invent that word, or did they invent? Who the fuck knows? Anyway, same weird looking fucking fish. They caught white whales and big black whales and dragged them to their igloos without the least trouble. But there was one strange thing about these tiny people. Strange as they were, they could not move anything after it had been touched by Eskimos. Oh God, I've never heard that before. Oh, this is getting interesting. Now, it happened one day that two dwarves had landed a large black whale. They dragged it up to the hill to a shed without the least trouble. As they were about to put it in the shed, an old Eskimo woman and a small boy came up and stood watching them. "Do not touch our whale," cautioned one of the dwarves, For if you do, we will never be able to move it to our igloos. Then the two dwarves fucked off, basically. As soon as they were gone, the woman and the little boy went to the whale and touched it with their fingers. They just had to do it, it seems. Then they went home to their igloo. It's like doo-doo-doo. Not long afterwards, the dwarves returned to carry away their whale, but they could not lift it. They tried again and again, but it would not move. Then they knew why. They walked in looking very angry. As they came near the woman, they made motions with their fists as if to strike her in the face. But they didn't touch her. They only made threatening motions, and then they left and never returned. More bark than bite, I see. When they had disappeared, a strange thing happened. The old woman's face began to swell up and her cheeks got red as if she had been beaten. Her face swelled and swelled until it became very round and her cheeks got redder and redder. And that was the way her face remained. Even to this day, when you go to an Eskimo village, you will still see those round faces and deep red cheeks that the people have had ever since the dwarves punished the old woman who touched their whale. What? Where did this take place? Why does everybody have swelled up red faces? I don't know. Is that a dig? Is that a dig on Eskimos? Because we have like kind of little round moon faces. I mean, fucking guilty. But damn, God. They did us dirty. Red? Come on. I mean, you know, the whole like Peter Pan. Did you never not cringe watching that whole "What makes the red man?" I mean, we thought it was fucking banging when we were kids, but now it's like, oh my God, they could say that. The next story we're going to read is called The Boy Who Ate Too Much. A small boy once lived in an igloo with his old woman. The boy was always hungry and always begging for food. But one day, the last of the food was eaten, so the old woman sent him down to the beach to search for food. I know sometimes around here, when the tide goes, people go and get like clams. I've never done it. I think that's pretty fucking cool though. The first thing he found was a little tomcod. So if y'all don't know what a tomcod is, it's like this teeniest of cod. I've seen the big gross ones on my last Homer trip. It was gross. Anyway, these little cods are about yay big. And they're delicious. And I prefer them raw. They've got this creamy texture to them. And when you fry them up, they're like really soft and flaky. But another thing that people say when they eat tomcod once in a while is sometimes it makes their lips numb or their tongue. So I don't know. They've got some weird little I'm not really sure what kind of a weird. He picked it up and after pulling off its head, swallowed it at one gulp. Damn. Continuing his search, he presently came upon a seal. As before, he pulled off its head and ate the whole seal. On he went, still hungry, until he came upon a large bearded seal, or ugruk, sunning itself in the sand. Before it could scramble back into the water, he had caught it, pulled off its head, and eaten it. Not satisfied yet, he continued down the beach until he caught sight of a white whale, stranded high and dry in the sand. In the same manner as he had done with the tomcod, and the seal, and the ugruk, he pulled off its head and ate the whale, skin, bones, blubber, and all. After the boy had finished the whale, he felt better and presently began to sing. Um, I watched this documentary one time about this condition called Prader-Willi syndrome. And it's a syndrome where like these people are born without that thing in their head that tells them that they're full. So they just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. And people they have to like chain their refrigerators up so the fucking kids won't. After the boy had finished the whale, he felt better and presently began to sing. He rubbed his belly and sang to his stomach. For the first time in his life, he had enough to eat. But soon he became very, very thirsty. So he went to a nearby pond and began to drink. He drank and drank and drank until the pond was quite dry. Then he started off for the igloo in which he lived with the old woman. Reaching the igloo, he tried to get in at the door, but he could not get through. He had eaten too much. I know that feeling. We just had Thanksgiving recently. How am I to get in? He called to the old woman. Come in through the window, she answered. The window was much smaller than the door, but he tried it anyway and found he could just get his head through. I can't get through the window, he called to the old woman. Come through the ventilator, cried the old woman in answer. This seemed ridiculous to the boy, since the ventilator was very much smaller than the window, but he tried anyway. This time he got his head and shoulders through, but he could go no further. Again, he called to the old woman for advice. Come in through the eye of the needle, she shouted. Holding up the needle, and through it the boy came tumbling onto the floor. When the old woman saw how he swelled from eating too much, she shouted, Look out! Keep away from the seal oil lamp. But in spite of himself, the boy stumbled toward the lamp. At the same instant, the lamp sprang towards him. The old woman barely had time to rush out through the door. Boom! There was a sound, like a mighty clap of thunder. When all was again still, the old woman crawled up to the window and peeked in. The boy had disappeared. The lamp was gone too. But down in the room where they had been was a deep, dark pool, and in it were swimming a tomcod, a seal, an ugruk, and a big white whale. Okay, the next story is called The Hunter and the Raven. There was once a hunter who was a very poor shot. In fact, he could not even see where his arrows went when he shot them from his bow. Day after day, he would hunt for caribou, but never did he bring one home. The other hunters teased him about it, so much that the poor hunter became ashamed of himself and very unhappy. At length, life became unbearable to him, so he decided to freeze himself to death. That's a little extreme, buddy. So one day, when it was very cold, he went far out upon the snow-covered tundra. There he took off his parka, his fur trousers, his warm mucklucks and mittens, and lay down in the snow to die. I mean, who hasn't felt like that once in a while, right? Strange to say, he did not freeze as he had hoped, but instead the heat of his body melted the snow away from him. As he lay there with his eyes closed, trying to freeze, Mr. and Mrs. Raven came by, and noticing they had no clothes on and his eyes were closed, thought that he was dead. Will you take his eyes out first? Asked Mrs. Raven to her husband. I'm afraid to, returned Mr. Raven. I don't believe he's dead. Oh, yes, he is, returned Mrs. Raven. He has been dead a long time. You see, the foxes have carried away his clothes. Yes, you are right, said Mr. Raven. I will take out his eyes. So, drawing out his knife, he jumped upon the man's chest to cut out the eyes. The hunter had heard their conversation, and just as the raven jumped on his chest, he scrambled to his feet and sent poor Mr. Raven tumbling to the ground. The hunter caught the raven's knife as he dropped it and tried to catch the raven, but it kept backing away. Why would the raven have a knife? Okay, whatever. Give me my knife, Mr. Hunter, begged the raven, but the hunter would not. Please, give me back my knife, but I will pay you anything you want. When you go hunting, you shall always have luck. Are you speaking the truth? Asked the hunter. Yes, said the raven. You shall be a great hunter. Nothing better could I ask, replied the hunter. You may have your knife. Always remember this one thing, said Mr. Raven as he received his precious knife. Whenever you kill a caribou, always take out the eyes first. Thereupon he thanked the hunter for the knife, and he flew away. The man put on his fur clothes, and taking his bow and arrows, started to hunt again. Soon he saw a herd of caribou and easily killed 2 of them. Following the raven's advice, he took out the eyes first, and then began to skin the animals. Presently, Mr. and Mrs. Raven came flying down, and after eating the eyes, flew out again. Just as the raven had promised, the man became a great hunter, and for a long time always found game when he went hunting. People no longer teased him, but honored him for his great skill. But after a time, he became very proud of his success and completely forgot the raven's warning. One day, he killed a caribou, and not troubling to remove the eyes, skinned it out and carried the meat home. The following day, he saw no caribou. The next day, he was just as unlucky. The third day, he saw a caribou, but when he shot at it, he could not see where his arrows fell. Then the hunter, remembering his previous experience, slyly decided to freeze himself. So, going upon the tundra, he took off his warm parka, his fur trousers, his mucklucks, and mittens, and lay in the snow. Before long, the hunter was frozen stiff. Some of these stories remind me a little bit like Tales from the Crypt. I don't know, like this guy gets his comeuppance and it's always so fucking morbid. But I guess that's how we learned shit, right? Back thousands of years ago. Like, you don't live this long in this crazy, desolate area unless you get the shit scared out of you. All right, this next story is called How a Worm Destroyed a Tribe. On the northern coast of Seward Peninsula, that's where I'm from, there once lived a tribe of Eskimo. It was their custom each spring to leave their village and go to Cape Espenberg, where they spend the summer hunting for ogook seals and whales. One spring, when they departed, an old woman was forgotten and left behind in a deserted village. No food was left for her, and no one to look after her. But this old woman was not ready to die, even though her people thought her time had come. So each day she would go out to the beach and search for food. Sometimes she would find a piece of blubber, or a fish, or perhaps a piece of skin. I don't know if she'd find blubber. That's like not rancid. Anyway, she kept from starving. One day, as she was on her usual food hunt, she happened to see a small worm in the sand. And wishing a companion, she was very, very lonely. Girl, same. No matter what she found to eat, she shared it equally with the worm. And as she fed it, the worm grew larger and larger It followed her about like a dog, and soon was large enough to hunt game for her. A nice worm. It caught many birds and rabbits, and when it was stronger, would hunt in the sea and bring back seal meat for the both of them. Fall approached, and the first snow was falling. It was now time for the tribe to return to the village for the winter. The worm was a huge monster by now and could kill the largest animal. So I wonder if it's like those monsters from the fuck was that movie called with Kevin Bacon? It was like in the desert and there's like giant fucking worms. No, not it's not Dune. It's fuck, what is it called? I mean, Kevin Bacon, sandworms. At last the umiaks of the returning tribe could be seen in the distance. Even though they had deserted her and left her alone to die, the old woman was glad to see them returning. Aww. She's so forgiving. I wish I could be like that. But the worm was not. Spirit animal. He seemed to rage and boil within himself. And the closer the boats approached, the more ferocious he became. The old woman saw it was useless to try to quiet him, and it was too late to warn the people. As soon as they landed, out rushed the giant worm. The men fought fiercely with spear and bow to defend themselves, but they could not pierce the thick hide of the worm. In a few moments, every man, woman, and child had been killed. The old woman had become terrified during the fight and had fled across the tundra, fearing that she would be killed also if she stayed. The worm, however, did not intend to kill her. He had killed the people only because they had left the old woman to die, and now he returned to the igloo to receive her thanks and to go on as they had before. But she was not in the igloo. When they found her tracks leading out across the tundra, he became angry at her desertion and followed her across the snow. At nightfall, he overtook her, still running, and killed her, as he had the rest of the tribe. There being no one left, the village fell into ruins, which you may still see. But even today, no Eskimo will live at a place where the worm destroyed a tribe. This next story is called The Story of a Head. For up the Kobuk River, there once lived a young man who had for a companion a human head. Naturally, this would seem to you to be a very odd partnership, but this head was alive and could talk. Although it had no body or legs, the head had the ability to go wherever it wished. One day, the two companions attended a dance in the Kagi. The Kari meaning the main igloo. When it began to get late, the man said to his friend, the head, "It is bedtime now. Let us go home." But the head replied, "I would like to stay a little longer. You go home, and I'll soon follow." "No, you must not go alone," said the young man. "The dogs will eat you." "Oh no, the dogs won't eat me," returned the head. "I'll say, 'Quack, quack, quack,' and the dogs will run away. You go home, and I'll soon be there." "Very well," said the young man, and started to his igloo. As soon as he had gone, the head began to think about a certain young woman who didn't want to marry anybody. Sounds familiar. When nobody was looking, it left the Kagi and rolled swiftly toward her home. When it reached the door, it rolled in quietly, but not quietly enough. For the young woman heard it enter, and taking a hold of his hair, whirled the head around in the air and heaved it through the open door. Out it went, but it didn't strike the ground. It didn't even make a sound, but sailed through the air and landed safely at its own door. I have that power. When it came in, the young man awoke and asked, "How did you get home?" "Oh, I just rolled home," answered the head, and hopped into its bed. The next day, the companions went into the Kagi again. They stayed until late in the evening, when the young man suggested they go home as before. But the head was not ready to leave, and said that it would come later. "But the dogs will eat you," warned the young man. "Oh, no, they won't," laughed the head. "I'll just say, 'Kua, kua,' and they'll go away." Just as soon as his friend had left, the head rolled out and down the igloo of the young woman who wouldn't marry anybody. It rolled in as quiet as a mouse, but the sharp ears of the girl heard it as before. She took it by the hair, whirled it around her head, and sent it flying through the door in the roof. But it didn't strike the ground. It didn't even make a sound, but sailed through the air and landed safely at its own home. When it came in, the companion asked, "How did you get past the dogs?" "Oh, I just rolled past," answered the head, and went to bed. The third night, they went to the Kagi, and again the head refused to go home, and the young man was ready. The third time it rolled out and down to the young woman's igloo. Very softly it opened the door and rolled in. The young woman heard it, but didn't throw it out, feeling it would be less trouble to marry the head and end the nuisance. So the head was happily married in spite of its seeming handicaps. Shortly after the wedding, the head noticed that there was very little food in the igloo. So it said to its wife, "Tie a rope to my hair, then swing me around your head and throw me to the door. I'll show you I can hunt." The wife tied the rope as instructed and threw it high in the air. It kept going until it disappeared far out on the tundra. Before long, the wife was surprised and delighted to see the head rolling back with a fine, fat caribou. The young woman told the good news to her aged parents, and they were all glad to learn that the head could hunt. Thereafter, they not only had plenty of food, but became rich. Each day, the head went hunting. The young wife would tie a longer rope in its hair in order to throw it farther. In this way, it can get the bigger caribou farther distant. One day, she tied on the longest rope she could find and twirled the head round and round. Then she hurled it high into the sky. Out across the tundra and over the hills it went, until lost in sight. But this time, it didn't land. It didn't even make a sound, and it never came back. All right, the last story we're going to read today is called The Boy Who Couldn't Remember. A small boy once lived alone with his grandmother. It's always like a really big thing, huh? A guy and his grandmother. I mean, yeah. Sometimes it's like a thing with the Yupiks for like their first kid will go to their grandparents or whatever. But like, I'm seeing a trope here. Anyway, in the winter time, when it was very cold, the old woman would send the boy fishing. He would make a small hole in the ice and fish through it until he had caught enough for his grandmother and himself. And then he would go home and she would cook them. One day, when he was through fishing, he lay down on the ice and looked into the hole. Way down on the bottom, he saw a small bullhead. And if y'all don't know what a bullhead is, it's kind of like when you're fishing and you catch something and you're all excited and you pull it up and it's just like this little garbage fish. That's what a bullhead is. Like this really ugly little, and you can't eat it. You just gotta like fucking throw it back. "What is your name?" called the boy. "My name is Yahura," replied the boy. "Yahura, Yahura, Yahura," repeated the boy, and picking up the bag of fish, started for home running. He had gone only half a way, however, when he forgot the bullhead's name. So he ran back to the hole and asked again, "What's your name?" "My name is Yahura," answered the little fish. "Yahura, Yahura, Yahura," repeated the little boy, and he ran faster than ever towards home. For it was late and it was getting cold. But again, when almost to the igloo, he forgot the name. Back to the hole he ran, and looking down, he asked for the third time, "Oh my God, what's your name, little fish?" The bullhead told him as before, "Yahura." "Yahura, Yahura, Yahura, Yahura," repeated the boy as his breath froze on his parka hood. This time he reached the door, but as he tried to repeat the name, he found he had forgotten it again. Still, he would not give up, so he returned, took one step, and fell dead. His grandmother found him frozen at the door. Never forget Rumpelstiltskin or a Yahura. These are fucking grim as fuck. Anyway, I hope you all had a really good 2024. Everything was great. Everything is great. You know, I shouldn't complain. I'm not going to. Everything was great. But for those of you who the year hasn't been great, sending you positive vibes. And I hope you guys a great 2025. Right. Bye.